Chapter 1 The Harem Overlord and His Sacred Powers, Chapter Preview. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. A young man whose appearance was hidden behind a cloak appeared in the sky. He appeared so suddenly as though he had stepped between two places. This should be the right place, the young man said as he glanced below his feet. A huge forest stretched on for kilometers and a huge mountain stood in the middle of it. The mountain was called the Mountain of Chance, and it was rumored that the goddess of luck resided on this mountain. But it was no rumor, as the young man, Kai, himself had explored this mountain to meet the goddess of luck. Unfortunately, he encountered the goddess of misfortune instead, and things got a little too out of hand. But that was not the reason Kai was here. He threw aside his cloak and a handsome face was revealed underneath it. Purple black hair that curled up to face the sky and eyes the color of the universe with snow white skin. His appearance was so dazzling that if normal humans gazed at him, they would die. He scanned the area once again before a bright flash of white light went off in front of him. A huge cube appeared around him and trapped him. Numerous formations appeared on the cube as they started to link with each other. Kai didn't even bat an eye as he snapped his fingers to dismantle the formation. But for some reason, it didn't work. He frowned and manually tried to dismantle the formation, but before he could do that, he was teleported away. A special realm, huh? Kai thought amusingly as he appeared in a dark square-shaped realm. His purple eyes started glowing as he tried to see if someone else was inside here, but before he could see anything, numerous powerful auras filled the atmosphere. These auras, it can't be. Kai frowned as the entire realm lit up with light. Numerous men appeared in front of him, and the horrible auras he felt earlier belonged to them. The legendary Harem Overlord finally arrives. A mocking voice was heard, and a middle-aged man with a crooked nose and green hair stepped out of the crowd. His face was set in a permanent sneer as he mocked Kai. But it was childish of them to try and provoke Kai, as he always kept his cool. Disappointed by Kai's reaction, the man reached inside his royal red robes and took out a small ring. This was a space ring used to store objects, and it had a very large space inside it. The space present inside each ring determined its price. "What do you want, Your Majesty, the Divine Emperor?" Kai said in a mocking voice and gave the man a small bow. But unlike him, the Divine Emperor was easily provoked, and his nostrils flared at Kai's provoking. "Oh, mock me all you want, but you won't be able to change what happened here." The Divine Emperor took control of himself as he gave Kai an evil grin. He took out something from his space ring and threw it on the ground. It was an ordinary pink stone, but to Kai, it was a very important part of his life. "Rizia," he slowly said as his expression darkened. The pink stone was a god soul. After reaching the semi-divinity realm, cultivators formed a sphere-like thing inside them, which was the presentation of their soul. After ascending into godhood, the sphere turned into a stone which was known as the god soul. If someone somehow manages to kill a god, a piece of the stone is the only thing that remains. The pink stone on the ground indicated that someone named Rizia was dead. "Oh, she is not the only one." The Divine Emperor laughed madly as he emptied the contents of the space ring on the ground. More than 40 god souls tumbled down on the ground, each falling in a straight line. The other men also started to laugh as the last stone fell out of the ring. But Kai's expression darkened as he saw each one of those stones. He murmured some names that no one could hear. The god souls on the ground had all belonged to the women who were part of his harem. "We wanted to *pe them before we killed them, but alas. Your harem protection allowed them to protect themselves from us as we tried to *pe them, and other than that, they fought tooth and claw to kill us. But unfortunately for them, we are the strongest men in the universe and our numbers far exceeded them. In the end, we overwhelmed them and they died painfully." The Divine Emperor was loving the expression of despair on Kai's face, and he wanted to savor every second of it. "I was a fool to let you all live. I pitied some of you as your wives left you for me, whereas some of you were in love with some of my women, but your hopes were crushed when they chose me. And the biggest thing is that some of you belong to their families and you still betrayed them. Kai said in a dangerous voice as his gaze shifted from one person to another. His eyes flared as a dark aura emerged from his body and tendrils of darkness wrapped around his hand. He punched the nearest group of people he could find. They died instantly as he was too powerful for them to control, but the Divine Emperor's smile widened when he saw Kai attacking a few people. It's your time. The Divine Emperor said and shook his hand forward. Everyone present there released their auras at the same time and directed the energy towards the Divine Emperor. Yin-Yang Seal of Life. The Divine Emperor formed a circle in front of him and divided it into two before sending the attack in Kai's direction. Kai simply stood rooted on the spot as he saw the divided circle coming towards him. This attack was something no one could evade, dodge or destroy. This seal was a secret technique that was passed down to every Divine Emperor since a long time ago. This seal used 90% of the immortal chi which was only present in an immortal's body, and 70% of the golden ichor, the blood of gods, to seal the opponent's cultivation for eternity. Its side effects were huge and the user could also lose his or her life. This indicated that the Divine Emperor truly hated Kai as he went to such extents to seal his cultivation. Before it touched Kai, the circle separated into two white and black parts. They hit Kai's body and sealed his cultivation. His aura slowly retracted before completely disappearing. We will now torture you for eternity and each of us will savor our precious time with you. The Divine Emperor said savagely. Even though Kai's cultivation was sealed, he still cringed after hearing these words. If someone didn't know better, they would think that the Divine Emperor was a male Yandra. He took out a sword and slashed it in Kai's direction. Thousands of wounds appeared on Kai's body and golden blood started to flow out of it. All of you are so foolish. I let you go without doing anything to you and you still came back to kill me. Now I definitely know why the previous harem overlords pretend that this power was gone. Kai said while laughing, making them wonder if he had finally snapped after today's events. I, the harem overlord, used the divine harem wish to reincarnate myself and my killed lovers. Kai said blandly as nothing happened. The Divine Emperor started to laugh but suddenly gasped as purple sparks flickered around Kai's body. The others followed the Divine Emperor's example as more and more purple sparks appeared around Kai's body. They all knew what this power was. That power was destroyed millenniums ago. The Divine Emperor shouted in disbelief before his face suddenly paled as he realized something. You have that too, don't you? He said in a small voice as purple sparks continued to flicker around Kai's body. I, the Harem Overlord, used the Divine Harem Curse to curse every single person who ever bore ill wishes towards my harem. All of you will die by our hands and it will be brutal. Kai said in an amused tone as his lips curled up in a smile. Following his words, the god souls on the floor started to tremble. Kai's image flickered as he vanished into thin air, the souls vanishing after him. The place submerged into total silence as every person present there was horrified of what they had heard, all of them trying to deny it. The harem wish and curse were the most sacred powers of the harem overlords millenniums ago. These were the most dangerous powers that could grant the harem overlord a wish and a curse the moment they were about to die or were in a state that was almost similar to death. These powers could allow the harem overlord to ask for anything in this world, and similarly, you can lay any type of curse on anyone. And every time anyone had seen these powers in person, they didn't live to tell the tale as these powers wrote fate that was set in stone that was unbreakable. And the most dreadful thing was that these powers had just been used against them. They could only wait for the worst to happen as there was practically nothing they could do against it. And just like Kai had said, all of them will die brutally. Chapter 2 Falling on the Mortal Cultivation World, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ripples went through the entire space as Kai's body appeared in the middle of the universe. Many cosmos were present beside him, each having a certain color. Some were black, while some were white, whitish green and blue, and were swirling in a circular motion. The rest of the space was covered by complete darkness, and Kai's body was dipping inside it. Only his eyes were visible when suddenly, purple sparks started flickering around his entire body. Within seconds, the darkness retracted back as though it was afraid of the sparks, and Kai's body was left hanging in the middle of the universe. However, Kai was unconscious and he couldn't see anything that was happening in front of him. Suddenly, the god souls that had disappeared now appeared beside him. They formed a giant circle around Kai's head and started rotating around it. One by one, each soul turned into a pure ball of light and entered Kai's body. The purple sparks covered his entire body and he started glowing. His eyes flew open automatically, even though he was still unconscious. Following the example of his body, they, too, started glowing. Every single soul penetrated his body, and after the last one was gone, the glowing dimmed before finally disappearing. He was once again teleported away, but this time, he was conscious of what was happening to him. Kai opened his eyes to see where he was. A giant sphere loomed in front of him. No, it was not a sphere. In reality, the sphere in front of him was a planet. After he noticed the planet, Kai saw that he was falling towards it, and by falling, he meant an asteroid crashing on a planet falling. Shouldn't I reincarnate in a newborn child or perhaps a dead person's body? Because I don't understand why I am falling through the sky. Kai asked himself as he wanted some answers. And out of nowhere, a message popped in front of him. It read, N. Because that would have been too cliché. Wait. Did you just breach the fourth wall? New words appeared in front of the first sentence and Kai was confused at the word the fourth wall. N. You know what, just forget about it. Uses the ultimate move of the writers, Thanos' finger snap. Kai's eyes went blank and he lunged into unconsciousness. The next time he opened his eyes, his entire body was on fire. The previous time Kai had examined his body, it was being censored to his eyes, and that was weird. But now, he could clearly see his entire body as it was catching fire because of the increase in Kai's speed. Now that he thought about it, Kai looked around and saw that he was reaching the surface of the planet as he was up in the clouds. Once the clouds parted away, 5 continents were made visible to him and a vast ocean was covering the rest of the planet. Kai crossed his legs and sat in that form, even though he didn't stop falling. He had tried to fly, to teleport, to change his form, and pretty much everything else he could have done when he was a god. Seeing that nothing was working, Kai just gave up as he saw that he was falling on the western continent. He neared a forest and was crashing on the ground at a very fast speed when he suddenly stopped, his body hovering an inch above the ground before slowly touching it. But even though he didn't crash, the force emitted by his descent had created a huge hole in the ground. Kai couldn't believe what happened, but since he didn't want it to waste any time, he stood up and saw that his normal clothes were back in his body. A pure black T-shirt with a shiny royal blue jacket and normal black jeans were his preferred clothes. Kai felt that something was wrong with his body as there was no spiritual energy inside him. He tried to use his spiritual sense on himself, but he failed to do it. Now what should I do? Kai asked himself as he walked towards a puddle of clear water on the ground. Thankfully, his face was still the same with his curling purple black hair and universal purple colored eyes. Am I mortal now? He asked and glanced at the sky. Kai wasn't feeling despair because he knew that there might be something he could do. But before he could think about that, a group of people appeared in the sky. They landed in front of Kai and gazed at him with curiosity. It was a group of 5 people, 3 of them being men and the rest of them being women. All of them were wearing white robes with a phoenix symbol on it that stretched from the heart to the waist. Hey kid, do you know what happened here? One of the men with golden brown hair asked Kai. The mortal cultivation world. Kai silently thought as the symbol told him everything. The mortal cultivation world consisted of cultivators that belonged to the first 7 cultivation realms. Unfortunately, Kai didn't remember them as he had ascended into godhood about a few millenniums ago. And once someone became that powerful, every minor information like the starting cultivation realms would automatically disappear from their mind. And that's what happened to Kai. Seeing that Kai was not replying, the golden-haired man frowned and stepped forward. He touched Kai's shoulder and released his spiritual energy inside him. Kai felt the spiritual energy travel inside him, but he couldn't do anything to stop it. The man then stepped back with a disappointed expression and looked at his partners. Nothing, not even an ounce of spiritual energy is present inside him. He is a pure mortal. The man said with another frown, and the others gazed at Kai with animosity. I have a theory about him, Elder Jean. One of the women said, and the golden-haired man, whose name was Jean, raised his eyebrows at her. I think that he is a normal human who was here to collect fruits or something. According to my theory, that huge thing dropped down here and this boy came here to see what was going on. That's when something emerged from the ashes and scared this boy. I think that's why he is not talking. The woman explained her theory and the others nodded as if that made complete sense. But Kai was angry at them. He wanted to kill them, but his powers were gone. If only, no thinking about something won't make it happen. Kai stood up and looked at the group with a neutral face. The others, thinking that he was about to tell them something, stopped talking. Do you want to say something, boy? Jean asked, and Kai frowned. Why are they calling me a boy again and again? Kai asked himself mentally before he looked in the puddle once again. His face was as young as an 18-year-old young man, but there weren't any major changes to his appearance. He normally looked like a 25-year-old man, but perhaps deducting a few years was better. Stop talking to me as though I am a 3-year-old child. Kai snapped as they laughed, mocking him. While being an immortal, he had perfect control over his emotions. But now, he was mortal now and his emotions were running around wildly. He moved forward with his fist raised as though he wanted to punch Jean, who just laughed and launched a kick at him. The kick hit him in the abdomen and he flew back and hit against a tree. His body slowly fell on the ground and his vision blurred. He, the great Harem Overlord, who everyone was terrified of, was defeated by just a kick. The world was never much fair to begin with, but this was really unfair. He didn't know whether his harem was alive again or not, or what was happening to them if they were alive. If they too had fallen from the sky, then who knows what would have happened to them. And sadly, his protection over them was gone as he couldn't sense their presence with his harem powers. But then, a spark of hope ignited inside him as he felt a small amount of spiritual energy traveling inside his body. It looked as though his body had trapped Jin's spiritual energy inside him. Maybe he could survive on this world, and perhaps with the help, no, not help, perhaps by creating a miracle, he could find his harem and live peacefully after that. But now, he had to think of a plan to protect himself from the people in front of him. Chapter 3: The Golden Blood, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4: The Golden Blood, Chapter Preview. The group kept laughing at Kai before they formed a circle and started talking using spiritual messages. This was great for Kai as he needed some time to plan his next move. He only had enough spiritual energy to use a single move. He sat up and started thinking about some ideas. Now the problem was that Kai's moves took too much spiritual energy and he didn't have enough of it to use them. However, if he forcefully used them, he might die, and this time, he would die for good. And he couldn't die before finding his harem and taking their revenge. He had some low-level techniques, but the problem was that he didn't know the group's cultivation. The move might be useless against them if they had higher cultivation than Kai. He could use his spiritual sense on them to try sense their cultivation, but it would be a stupid thing to do. Unlike Jean, who had to touch Kai to use his spiritual sense on him, Kai could use spiritual sense without touching anyone. Most people in the mortal cultivation realms didn't know this, but the spiritual sense they used was a fake, or rather, undeveloped version of the original one. Real spiritual sense developed when someone reached the last realm of the mortal cultivation realms. That spiritual sense could be used in a particular radius around the user by spreading spiritual energy inside it. It wouldn't work on cultivators that were in a more advanced realm compared to the user. However, if your opponent was in the same realm as you or their realm was lower than your realm, you would be able to sense their cultivation. But it wouldn't work for Kai because he didn't know the mortal realms, and if he used spiritual sense, or rather, was still able to use spiritual sense, he would lose what little spiritual energy he had. But before he could think of anything else, the group stopped talking and started walking towards him. All of us think that you saw what fell from the sky and that thing messed you up. So, we have decided to kill you. No hard feelings. Elder Jean said in an amused tone. An idea clicked inside Kai's mind that it was something he hated, but he didn't have any other choice. The idea he had was plain stupid and might bite him in the back later on, but there was nothing he could do about it. You guys are right. That thing saw me and I was frozen in fear when I saw its appearance. However, that thing didn't run, it's still here and shows hatred towards you. Kai said with an evil grin, and his eyes looked as though they belonged to a madman. Jean and the others stopped in their tracks once they heard Kai's words. They looked around to see if anyone was there, but they could see anyone. Oh, he is not there. He is precisely inside me and I have the access to its powers. Kai said again and laughed, making them all step back. After Kai was assured that the distance between them and him was enough, he used the only move he could use. The move's name was Light Steps, and it was a technique that could be used to teleport from one place to another. His body started to emit a white light and he started vanishing. Jean, realizing that Kai was trying to run away, ran at him as he tries to capture him. Unfortunately, Kai was already gone and Jean only grabbed thin air. He furiously told the others to search for him, even though something in his heart told him that they won't be able to find him. Kai appeared 20 kilometers away from the group and immediately crashed on the ground. He took a few deep breaths and relaxed his body a little. Whatever spiritual energy he had was gone. He was furious with himself for using such a cowardly strategy, and for the first time, he let himself think that what would have happened if he had a little power. As if the universe wanted to mock him, his body started to glow and numerous information filled his head. His body was once again flowing with spiritual energy, and he remembered many things about the mortal cultivation, the starting thing being the cultivation realms. There were 7 mortal cultivation realms and each of them was divided into 10 stages. Their names were Yin and Yang Gathering Realm, Earth Spirit Realm, Sky Spirit Realm, Hell Spirit Realm, Heaven Spirit Realm, Imperial Spirit Realm, Divine Spirit Realm. Kai was finally able to use his spiritual sense on himself, and he found out that he was at the 9th stage of the Heaven Spirit Realm. He sighed at this since he didn't have his power during the time he needed. He teleported back to see if the group was still there, but just like he had expected, they were gone. He tried to use his spiritual sense in a radius, but it only extended to 20 meters before stopping there. He just sighed and started using some of his techniques to see if he could still use them. It took him an entire day to use 2 of his most weakest techniques, as he had to recover his spiritual energy after the first one. It was a good thing I bound it with my blood, Kai said to himself after he had used the 2 techniques. He bit his right thumb and surprisingly, golden blood came out of it. This was shocking, as only gods had this in their veins. If Kai had ichor in his veins, this meant that his body was still part immortal. Another thing was that he could still use real spiritual sense without being in the divine spirit realm. But he would search that later on as he dropped the golden blood on the ground and ripples emerged in the air around Kai's neck. A golden pendant with a weird symbol dropped around Kai's neck. It was pure purple in color and Kai treasured this thing with his life, and because of that, he had bound this thing with his blood so that he would be able to summon this anywhere. Inside this were so many things that your mind would be blown away by them. The reason for this was that this pendant also served as a space pendant version of the space ring. But the only difference other than this being a pendant and that being a ring, was that this pendant had infinite storage inside it. If I still have ichor in my veins, does this mean that I still have? Kai's voice trailed off as he glanced at his left hand. Chapter for the Purple Shinigami, Chapter Preview, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Ruuyuan, the Purple Shinigami is here. A man burst into an open clearing where a group of people were partying. When they heard what he said, they dropped their bottles of booze on the ground and ran like hell was chasing them. Just then an explosion occurred inside the forest and they stopped running. It was as though their bodies wouldn't obey them, no matter how hard they tried to move. Out of the smoke, a young man with purple eyes and purple hair made his appearance. His lips were curled up in a devilish smile and his eyes glanced at the group who were frozen in fear. You really thought that you could run away from me? Kai said in an amused manner before he picked up the man who had called him the Purple Shinigami. He grabbed hold of his neck before snapping it in a clean motion. A few people screamed but none of them could move. Kai threw the lifeless body on the ground and looked at them with another smile. And, let's rewind back to see what happened. After completely examining himself, Kai decided to find a city so that he could gain information about the planet he was on. Unfortunately, without his spiritual sense, Kai couldn't check his surroundings to see where the nearest city was. After a lot of thinking, Kai decided to head towards the west direction as he was on the western continent. Don't question his logic for thinking up something like this, as this was the best idea he had. He encountered a few spiritual beasts in the way but he simply killed them with a snap of his fingers. His body was now full of spiritual energy and he had tremendous power inside him. He could now kill weak cultivators easily since compared to before, he had the spiritual energy to use his techniques. As he was deep in his thoughts, he didn't notice the rustling of bushes around him. 10 people jumped out of them and surrounded Kai. Well, what do we have here? A handsome young man roaming around the forest alone. Judging from your clothes, you aren't from around here. A man said with an annoying smile on his face. I am not sensing any spiritual energy from him. Go grab him and we will sell him as a slave to a noble family. The man said to his comrades and they took out various weapons. Even an idiot could tell that these guys were bandits and judging by this man's orders, he was their leader. Maybe I should head towards the north direction. Kai muttered to himself as he started walking towards the north. Hey, did yo? The leader started to speak but his mouth automatically closed. Kai then made a circular gesture with his hands and their necks rotated with his fingers. They came to rest in 90-degree positions and their bodies dropped on the ground. This happened to everyone except the leader who was so shocked by this that he wanted to scream but his mouth won't open. Kai then snapped his fingers and the lifeless bodies turned to dust that was blown away by the wind. Kai started walking in the north direction as though nothing had happened. After Kai walked away, the leader could finally speak but he didn't speak anything as he didn't have any words to describe what he just saw. He ran away as that was the only thing he could do. The reason Kai left him alive was so that he could tell the others about Kai and they would fear him and wouldn't bother him. Unfortunately, his little plan would fail. The leader did run to the nearest group of bandits he could find and told them about the purple-eyed Shinigami he saw. They didn't believe him and laughed at him. Later on, they too decided to attack Kai but they too suffered the same fate as the man's group. Everyone was killed, except for the leader who decided to share this information with the other bandits. Now every single bandit in the forest knew about Kai and the leaders called for an emergency meeting to decide on what to do. We should just avoid him and he would ultimately leave the forest. One of the leaders suggested and most of them agreed with him. But that's when a stupid greedy bastard decided to say something. From his description, I think he is from a powerful influence, meaning that he would be carrying various treasures with him. If all of us combine our strength and try to kill him, we can get our hands on those treasures. The greedy dude said, and the others entered a trance-like state as they thought about what they will do with the treasure if they successfully obtained it. All of them agreed to only take their most strongest cultivators with them, and they started searching the forest for Kai. And they found him pretty quickly as he was roaming around in circles. Kai might have been one of the most strongest cultivators to ever exist, but he was very bad at navigating. He could never keep the direction same and would thus end up roaming in circles. But when he saw the large amounts of bandits coming at him, he facepalmed. I let you both live so that you could tell them about me and all of you would remain away from me, he said in a disappointed voice as he looked at the two bandit leaders he left alive. You really think you can defeat us all? Another leader laughed and Kai looked at him with a devilish grin. It's not that I think I can kill you. It's that I can kill you, he said with a laugh and clenched his fist. The man who had just spoken started screaming as blood started to come out of his eyes, nose, and ears. His body exploded after a minute, his internal organs and a lot of blood splashed on the nearest group of persons. The others didn't notice, but a man quietly slipped away from the group. Kai noticed that and smiled inwardly. I got a person to catch, Kai said and hit the ground with his fist. An explosion occurred and the ground cracked, swallowing everyone standing above it. Back to the present. Let's give you a nice slow torturous death. Kai snapped his fingers and everyone there fell asleep. He had trapped them inside a nightmare where they were being killed by more than 100 different ways of torture. All of them were experiencing this except for one person. The one who ran away to warn the bandits stood rooted to a spot. Kai walked towards him with a devilish grin and touched his forehead with his fingers. The man's eyes lit up and he screamed as Kai burned him alive. He let the others experience this for a while before killing them too. After cleaning it up, Kai started heading towards the west direction as he had stolen the memories of the people he had killed. Now, he knew all the important things about this world, and surprisingly, some of them were quite helpful. Chapter 5 The Blue Moon Sect, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Everything in the mortal world was divided into ranks, be it cultivation techniques, alchemy pills, or artifacts. Technique ranks were mortal grade, spirit grade, hell grade, heaven grade, imperial grade, and divine grade. However, no one had seen a divine grade cultivation technique for a millennium. The weapon ranks were soul grade, imperial grade, divine grade, and immortal grade. They were further divided into 4 tiers. Low tier, medium tier, high tier, and finally peak tier. The alchemy pills were simply divided into rank 1 pills, rank 2 pills, and so on. They were further divided into 4 grades based on how much impurities they contained. Pills that contained 80 to 90.9% impurities were graded as low-grade pills. Pills that contained 40 to 70% impurities were graded as medium-grade pills, while those containing 30.9 to 1% impurities were graded as high-grade pills. Finally, pills that contained no impurities were known as pure-grade pills. According to the man's memories, an immortal grade weapon hasn't been seen for many centuries, whereas the last pure grade pill was created about 10,000 years ago. Kai had to admit, that was quite disappointing. In the upper realms, everything was decided based on how much power that thing had. Anyways, after the info dump, Kai finally found out the part he was looking for. The Western continent was ruled by some Xian family. Other than that, there were numerous sects on the continent, but the ones that outshone them were the 4 great sects. The Undying Flame sect, which specializes in smithing, the Red Flower sect, which specializes in alchemy, the Boundless Weapons sect, which specializes in weapons, and at last the Blue Moon sect, which surprisingly was a multipurpose sect. Multipurpose sects were sects that focused on almost everything, but due to that, they were usually weak Sinek. They focused on different things instead of one particular one. Kai was currently at the 9th stage of the Heaven Spirit Realm, and if he wanted to leave this planet, he had to reach the Divine Spirit Realm, as that was the highest realm achievable on this planet, but that was only true for Kai. If he had to guess, the highest realm one could achieve on this planet would be the Imperial Spirit Realm. And that was after centuries of cultivation. But if the Blue Moon sect truly was a multipurpose sect, he might find some dual cultivators there who would help in advancing in his cultivation. And other than that, he loved dual cultivation, so it was a win-win. So after that, Kai started to head towards the Blue Moon sect, and since he had pretty much killed every single bandit in the forest, his journey was almost peaceful. He reached the sect after 3 days of travel, and he looked at buildings that were in front of him. The sect was spread out in a large radius and many buildings were seen behind it. The entire sect was blue in color, as the color was derived from its name. The symbol of the sect was a crescent moon that was resting on the top of the sect. A sign saying that the sect was hosting an entrance exam was hung up near the entrance. His luck was quite good because due to the entrance exam, he could easily join the sect. But the problem was that he didn't want to start as an outer court disciple. If he wanted to advance in his cultivation, then Kai had to cultivate with girls at the Sky Spirit Realm or above. But it would also mean that he would have even less girls that would be useful to him. But all the outer court disciples he saw were either at the Yin/Yang Gathering Realm or at the most, the Earth Spirit Realm. Kai went to the registration desk where a young-looking woman was sitting. She had chocolate brown hair and piercing black eyes. She was sitting there with a bored expression as though she wanted to go somewhere else. The woman was wearing an azure color robe. She raised her head to look at Kai and her eyes widened. Kai's appearance and clothes didn't belong to this world. Which was of course true. Kai was used to this. Wherever he went, people would always stare at him. The women would stare at him with desire, whereas men with envy. Many had assaulted him, the men hoping to kill him and the women hoping to *PE. But unfortunately, all of them were killed by him. What are the requirements for the entrance exam? Kai asked casually. The woman broke out of her daze and cleared her throat. The only requirement is that you should be below 20 years and above 16 years of age. The woman said. And what are the requirements for becoming an inner court disciple? The woman narrowed her eyes at Kai's question. She reluctantly answered. The minimum requirement for being an inner court disciple is that you should be at the 8th stage of the Earth Spirit Realm and should be below 40 years of age. As for core disciples, your cultivation should at least be at the 8th stage of the Sky Spirit Realm and your age should be below 70. Kai nodded his head. I want to join the sect and become an inner court disciple. Kai said with a serious expression. The woman was dumbfounded. Kai looked like he was 19 years old. If he had reached the 8th stage of the Earth Spirit Realm at such a young age, then he was a genius. The woman didn't understand why someone like him would come to such a weak sect while he could have been accepted by the other 3 great sections. She tried to sense his spiritual energy but was unable to do so. She didn't want to believe that someone as young as Kai would have higher cultivation than her. In the end, she believed that it was because of a treasure he had. This meant that Kai was from a very powerful background, since treasures that hide your cultivation were rare. My name is Kiana and I am an outer court sect elder. If you are really at the Earth Spirit Realm, then I will allow you to join the sect as an inner court disciple. Kiana said. Kai didn't care about that and simply released his aura. He deliberately released it up to the 5th stage of Sky Spirit Realm too, as Kiana's jaw dropped to the ground. What was such a genius doing at a sect like the Blue Moon sect? Please wait here. I will go talk to the sect masters and then you can join the sect. Kiana said and hurried away. As he got the response he wanted, he sat down in a meditative state and started cultivating as there was nothing else he could do. Sect masters. Sect masters. Kiana said and ran up to the sect masters' rooms. The sect was divided into many parts. The outer court disciples lived at the outer court. Inner court disciples resided at the inner court and the core disciples resided at the central court. Other parts were dedicated to an exchange center, mission hall, medicine hall, cultivation pavilions, etc. Then there was the sect master pavilion where the patriarch and matriarch of the sect lived. Usually, other sects only had one sect master. But the Blue Moon sect made a special exception since the sect masters were dual cultivators. "Who dares to interrupt us?" a voice roared. It turned out that the sect masters were cultivating, which was nothing uncommon. Any other woman would have blushed, but Kiana was used to this. In fact, everyone at the Blue Moon sect was used to this. Kiana knocked at the sect master's door and entered the room. Both the patriarch and matriarch of the Blue Moon sect were lying on a bed and sheets were covering their body, but covering was an overstatement. Kiana could easily see the hard rod of the patriarch while the matriarch's breasts could clearly be seen. "This junior's name is Kiana and I am an outer court elder in charge with the entrance exam. A 19-year-old kid just came here and asked to join the sect. I was about to send him to the exam hall when he suddenly asked me about the requirements to become an inner court disciple," Kiana said. The sect masters narrowed their eyes and gestured for Kiana to continue. "I told him about it and he asked me if he could join as one. I was reluctant at first, but when I tried to sense his spiritual energy, I wasn't able to do so. This means that he has a treasure that hides his spiritual energy. I asked him to show his cultivation and when he did, I was shocked and directly came here." The sect masters were now alert and the patriarch asked her, "What was his cultivation realm?" He was at the 5th stage of the Sky Spirit realm. Kiana stuttered. "What?" The sect masters roared and unconsciously released their aura. The Blue Moon sect's sect masters didn't have higher cultivation levels like other sect masters, but they were still ahead of Kiana and their auras frightened her. Sorry." The sect masters apologized as they saw the expression of terror on Kiana's face and their auras retreated. "Now the question is, what is such a heaven-defying genius doing at our sect? I don't think he knows our history," the matriarch asked with curiosity. Kiana shrugged since she didn't have any idea. She suddenly remembered that she forgot about his clothes. He was wearing completely different clothes. "I have never seen such clothes. Maybe he is from some royal family." The sect masters were even more interested in this man. "Let's go greet him and then we will decide whether to let him in or not," the patriarch said and asked Kiana to leave so that they can dress up. Kai didn't know about this and knowing him, he doesn't care about such minor problems. If they decided to capture him or something, he could just snap his fingers and turn them to dust. Chapter 6 Defeating Everyone with a Sneeze, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kai was sitting calmly, thinking about sunshine, or in other words, the sun goddess. He still remembered the warm feeling he had when he embraced her for the first time. It was as though he was literally having sex with a sun. But suddenly, someone shook him and broke him out of his daze. Kai opened his eyes and saw 3 people staring at him. One of them was Kiana. As for the other 2, Kai didn't know them and he didn't care about it as long as he was able to join the sect. One of them was a woman with waist-length blue hair. Her eyes were ice blue and you would probably freeze to death if she glared at you. The other person was a bulky man with light brown hair and dark eyes. Both of them were looking at him with interested expressions, whereas Kiana was silently watching them from the background. Kai used his spiritual sense on them as he wanted to check their power levels. The man was at the 4th stage of the Hell Spirit realm and the woman was at the 6th stage of the same realm. Kai found traces of yin and yang qi on their bodies which marked them as dual cultivators. Though dual cultivators usually advanced faster their cultivation, but these guys were only at M average level. Based on its purity and energy, a dual cultivator could increase his or hers cultivation rapidly. However, normal people only absorb about 20 to 30% of the energy present in the yin/yang qi. Even in the upper realms, only 5 cultivators were able to absorb 100% energy. One of them was of course Kai. You don't become the Harem Overlord with just 20% energy consumption. Anyways, Kai raised an eyebrow at Kiana. Humph. Do you know who we are? The man asked as he puffed out his chest, thinking that Kai would fall on his knees and start worshipping him. But that didn't happen. I don't, since you didn't introduce yourself. Kai answered. This was the most logical answer to this question and Kai chose to use it. The man was baffled. Normally, most people were afraid of him when they saw his bulky figure. But here, a 19-year-old kid was looking him in the eye. However, the real shocking thing was that the kid's eyes were dangerous looking. The man could almost see them glowing and he unconsciously took a step back. You know, he is right. My name is Riang and his name is Jiang Junjun. We are the sect masters of the Blue Moon sect. The woman suddenly pushed the man back and stepped forward to introduce themselves. Satisfied with their answer, Kai stood up and then introduced himself. My name is Kai. Kiana and the sect masters stared at him. That was an intro. But to Kai, his name was the best introduction for him. Kiana told us that you were at the Sky Spirit Realm. Can you please show us your cultivation? Just like Kiana had said, the sect masters were not able to sense Kai's spiritual energy and they were curious to see if Kai really had a Sky Spirit Realm cultivation. He just shrugged and released his cultivation. His cultivation soared to the 5th stage of the Sky Spirit Realm and stopped there. The sect masters widened their eyes in disbelief. Kiana had been telling the truth. So Kai, why do you want to join this sect? Junjun asked. I am looking for dual cultivators to cultivate with me. Kai replied. Both the sect masters frowned at his answer. It was true that they had some dual cultivators in their sect, but they probably couldn't be compared to this kid. Now it's confirmed that he doesn't know about the sect's history. Junjun asked Riang using a spiritual message. I think he is telling the truth. Don't forget that even though his cultivation is high, he is a dual cultivator. Dual cultivators without any background aren't that strong as combat and usually think with their lower part than their head. If we can bring him to our side, it would be beneficial for us. Riang was a smart woman and Junjun agreed with her. Usually, if someone wants to become an inner court disciple then she should have completed some missions. Furthermore, they have to battle with an inner court disciple. But since nobody knows about you, I don't think anyone is going to battle you. Junjun said thoughtfully. You do know that I might leave this sect if you show so much reluctancy. Kai commented as these guys were wasting his time. And then, where will you go? We are the only sect on the continent that has dual cultivators. Riang snorted and smirked. This woman. She is quite smart and she might be right about this being the only place that had dual cultivators. But that doesn't matter to me. Kai thought with a smile. Even though dual cultivation was not frowned upon in this world. Many people didn't like it because of the erotic activities one has to participate in. However, no such feelings existed in the upper realms and he wished that he had reincarnated on such a place. Speaking of reincarnation. I don't think I reincarnated. Even though I can't describe what happened to me, it certainly isn't reincarnation. Kai thought as he answered the sect masters. There are plenty of places where I can get women to cultivate with me and I can even buy such things. Don't think that I am here just cause I don't have any other option. He said with quick curl of his lips as the sect masters frowned. We want you to take the entrance exam like normal and we will promote you to an core court disciple in a year. Riang said at last since this was the best idea she had. And other than, she thought that her plan was foolproof since they would make Kai loyal to the sect in that year and other than that, other people would get to know him and he would be able to cultivate with girls without any difficulty. Unfortunately, it backfired. Many people had tried to convince Kai to join their families or sects, but all of them had failed. One family had tried for 5,000 years before giving up. If those families were not able to convince him in that many years, these guys should just give up. That would take a long amount of time which I don't have. Honestly, if you are worried about someone questioning my presence here, I can just defeat everyone taking the entrance exam and no one can then question me. Understood? Kai asked as he stared at sect masters, his voice containing a dangerous edge. The sect masters were a little surprised by this, but they knew that Kai might be able to do this since he had a higher cultivation, and honestly, this kid was starting to frighten them. You have 2 seconds to decide or I am leaving. Kai added as he knew that this would speed up their decision. We will agree to this on one condition. If you cannot defeat everyone taking the exam, you will have to swear an oath that you will stay loyal to the sect. Riang said at last as he just nodded. Just tell me when the entrance exam is over. Kai sat in a meditative pose and started cultivating. Kiana, who had been watching everything this whole time, was shocked by Kai's offer. She wanted to warn him but knew that the sect masters had already agreed to it. She didn't believe that he could do it, but who was she to tell this to him? 2 hours later. Kiana came back from the exam hall and told Kai that the exam was now over. She then asked him to follow her as both of them started walking towards the exam hall. They arrived at the exam hall a few minutes later as Kai examined it. The exam hall was actually a huge field the size of 2 football grounds combined together. Around 5,000 people below the age of 20 were huddled together and they stared at Kai as he entered the exam hall. The sect masters were also there. They had told them that if even one of them managed to stand up after Kai attacked, all of them will be allowed to join the sect. Everyone thanked Kai for his foolishness. Unknown to them, Kai was gonna wreck them. Kai had a skill named aura manipulation. Kai could use this in 2 different ways. He could use this as a passive skill in which nobody would be able to sense his spiritual energy and cultivation. In the second way, he could use his full power while hiding his aura. In other words, if Kai released his heaven spirit realm cultivation, others would still see Kai's aura at the sky spirit realm. Okay. I don't want to waste any more time. Kai said and released his aura. Just like he had said, everyone saw Kai's aura at the 5th stage of the sky spirit realm. Kai moved his right hand in a circular and everyone was alert. Suddenly, the atmosphere turned chilly. Everyone hugged themselves and looked at Kai with fear. His eyes started to glow and he was about to launch an attack when he sneezed. All the people were blown away and froze in midair. Kai cleared his nose and stared at them. I didn't even use my skill and this happened. Maybe I should try not to sneeze while using such moves. He shrugged and looked at the sect masters who were not frozen since they were standing a safe distance away. The sect masters looked at him and thought that he was mad. That much power in a sneeze. What would have happened if Kai had used his skill? They dreaded to think about such a thing as they believed that Kai's move would have blown the entire sect away. Chapter 7 The Sect's Past, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 The Sect's Past, Chapter Preview. After freezing 5,000 people with a sneeze, Kai calmly looked at Junjun and Riang. They were so frightened that when Kai looked at them, they took a step back unconsciously. That was unintentional. Kai told the sect masters and started walking. Where are you going? Junjun stuttered because of the cold or perhaps, because of Kai. To the inner court. Kai stopped and answered the obvious. Are you crazy? What about these guys? Riang looked at the frozen people. Kai sighed and started gathering energy in his hand. A tiny fireball about the size of a marble appeared in the palm of his hand. He threw it towards the sky and the ball of fire suddenly started glowing. It released an extreme amount of heat. All the frozen people suddenly melted and fell on the ground. All of their clothes were wet and their hair were standing in spikes. Within a few minutes, their bodies and clothes dried up. After doing that, Kai walked away. The sect masters stared at his back with fear. After all, they hadn't expected him to be such a monster. Kai reached the registration desk to ask Kiana where the inner court was. She was sitting there with a bored expression when she saw Kai. "I passed. Please show me where the inner court is." Kai went up to her and asked nicely. Kiana was shocked by this, but the sect masters had personally watched Kai's test. So he wouldn't be lying about something like this. "We will go there, but first let's get you some robes," Kiana said and started walking. Kai shrugged and followed her. The entire sect was blue, like blue. From walls to ceiling to robes to pretty much everything. Kai liked blue color, but it was too much for him to see everything was in a shade of blue. Kiana took him to the exchange center, situated in the mission hall. It was a huge stall where the disciples could exchange sect points for items. But it had another use. Disciples could come here if they wanted to get their rank upgraded. New disciples received their robes here. They also received the sect token. A middle-aged man with black hair and green eyes was sitting there peacefully. Upon seeing Kiana coming with someone he didn't know, the man simply took out a light blue robe plus a token with a crescent moon symbol upon it. "We don't require that, Elder Min. Please take out an inner court disciple robe." Kiana sighed as she glanced at the robes. Elder Min was taken back by this. But he still did what Kiana asked and handed her a dark blue robe. Kiana also took the sect token and asked Kai to follow her. Elder Min eyed Kai carefully, but he had already followed Kiana out of the exchange center. The outer court disciples have light blue robes and the inner court disciples have dark blue robes. Whereas the core disciples have jade color robes. As for the sect masters and elders, we all have royal blue robes. The only difference is our belts. Sect masters have golden colored strip on theirs. The outer court elders have black on theirs, the inner court elders have silver, whereas the core elders have crimson. Kiana explained and handed the robes to Kia. Kai didn't like robes because they were too old-fashioned, but that only extended to himself. When some of his partners wore robes, they looked extremely beautiful in them, so he did have any problem with them. As for the robes, he just tossed them inside his pendant. Kiana coughed as she looked at Kai, but she didn't say anything to him. "Now this is a sect token," Kiana decides to say after a minute and handed the token to Kai, who simply threw it in his pendant. When you complete missions for the sect, you can take the reward as sect points or spirit stones. You can exchange sect points for various useful things. The sect token also proves that you are a member of our sect. Kiana explained. Anything else you want to tell me?" Kai asked as Kiana though for a moment. "I know that you are a dual cultivator, so I want to warn you about certain things. Since you suddenly became an inner court disciple, many people won't trust you and girls might not want to cultivate with you, no matter how handsome you are. There might be a few rumors about, so I hope you don't mind that." Kiana explained as Kai smiled. "If I was worried about rumors, I wouldn't have become a dual cultivator," he replied as Kiana nodded. "Do you have any particular talents except dual cultivation?" Kiana asked as she wanted to help him a little. "I have many talents that you will discover slowly. As for one of them, I can tell that you are a dual cultivator as well," Kai said with a smile as Kiana's eyes widened. "You might be right about that. Anyways, before going back to my job, I will tell you a little about the sect's master. A few centuries back, the Blue Moon sect used to be a dual cultivation sect, and it had many strong dual cultivation techniques. They were strong enough to threaten the other great sects and great families. Apparently they were taken over by their greed as they tried to rule the continent by defeating the Xian family. But the Xian family had a hidden power amongst them who managed to defeat the sect single-handedly. During that time, the ruler of the Xian family banned our sect from using dual cultivation techniques, but after his daughter, the current Xian family ancestor, came to the throne, she lifted that rule. The Blue Moon sect was allowed to use dual cultivation techniques but at a smaller scale, while most of the powerful ones were taken away from the sect. The sect was also forced to become a multipurpose sect, and after so much time, we have become a weak sect. So if you ever meet another great sect, they would either tease you or take advantage of you. Please steer clear of them. Kiana finished as Kai nodded and thanked her. I would like to meet someone on this realm who will be able to take advantage of me. But he or she will probably don't live to tell the tale. Kai muttered to himself and walked away with a devilish smile on his face. Chapter 8 The Ice Princess, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kiana had left him in front of his house and he entered it. It was a 2-room plus bathroom set. There was a large double bed, both the rooms with blue sheets. In fact, everything in the room was blue. Be it chairs, tables, beds, or whatever else you can imagine. Kai snapped his fingers and changed the color of the room and the things inside it to black. He sat on the bed and started remembering about a book he had written. The name of the book was Kai's Manual 101. How to Impress Women and Make Them Beg to Have Sex. He had written many ways to impress a woman. Even the Divine Emperor himself was surprised by this book. In reality, he wrote it when he was just 150 years old, so he was quite young at that time. Maybe I should start a massage center. No, that's too perverted, and I don't think anyone here can handle my massage without bursting into pieces. Kai thought. Maybe I should sell some treasures. No, that will be similar to boasting my money. What else did I wrote in that book? He could hardly remember what he had written in the book since it had been ages since he had read it. He couldn't remember why he had written such trashy ways to impress a woman. Perhaps he was drunk when he had written this, which was impossible as Kai could never get drunk. But you can't blame a young man's mind for thinking up such things, if a 150-year-old man can be counted as a young man. While reminiscing about his past, he suddenly remembered a very good way to impress a woman. Technique 14. Become a doctor and do a full surgery on her **y. Just don't think too much about the name. His young mind was always thought of perverted thoughts, and those thoughts had been written in that book in the form of useful advice. Anyways, in this technique, a person simply has to heal a woman with her problems. Later on, she will definitely return to you so that she could thank you. But it wasn't as though they will thank you with their bodies. But you could try to have a relationship with them and voila. You might get the chance to have sex with them. Well, this happened with Kai, but maybe the reason for this was that he had pleasured his patient too much. He stood up and left his room. He went to a good open spot in the inner court and conjured up some letters in the air. Kai's healing services. If you are not healed by this, then you will earn 50,000 spirit stones as compensation. Free for the first 2 days. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at those words. Many of them rubbing their eyes to see if what they reading was real or not. Hey, who are you? I have never seen you before. One of the inner court disciples said. Yeah, he is right. Another disciple said, and the rest followed them. I am someone the sect masters recruited to help the disciples. I can heal your body completely, regardless of any disease. If you don't believe me, then would you like to try? Kai said in a smooth businessman voice. Every single person present there stared at him. Since the sect had some healers in it, the others couldn't determine whether Kai was lying or not. After a few moments, a girl stepped out of the crowd. When Kai saw her face, he stepped back in shock. His face was full of disbelief and something no one could decipher. The person was a girl with pale blonde hair and striking yellow eyes. Her curves were large enough to make any man go crazy. Her long slim legs were covered by the robes she wore and her face was set in a permanent frown. 2 long scars were running on both sides of her face from her eyebrows to the end of her chin. Many frowned at her as though she was a problem, but Kai didn't judge her because of her scars. In reality, he loved his women because they were the ones who shaped his life. He did love their beautiful bodies, but their personalities were the real thing he loved about them. That face and that cold glare that could freeze anyone. It's her. Kai thought as he stared into her shimmering yellow eyes. The girl looked at Kai with an amused expression as she saw that he wasn't flinching away from her. My name is Mia. The Ice Princess and my lover. Kai thought sadly. Mia. Can you heal me? She asked. Mia was the Ice Princess, though, for someone related with ice, she had a bright appearance. This was because of her mother. Mia's home was the eternal frozen palace. Her father was the ruler, however, her mother was a hybrid. A mixture of fire and ice. Somehow, Mia's father fell in love with her and had 3 children. 2 boys and 1 girl. Mia's mother had yellow hair and blue eyes. But for some reason, Mia was born with yellow hair and eyes. Mia's mother was beautiful, but Kai didn't go after her since the Ice Emperor loved her and she loved him. Instead, he chose Mia. Kai was happy to see her and wanted to hug her but refrained himself since many people were watching. And other than that, it was clear to him that she didn't know him. Her face didn't even have a shred of recognition in it. Of course I can heal you. I can even demonstrate it for everyone. Kai said with a poker face and gestured Mia to come near him. Brace yourself. A feeling of extreme pleasure is gonna overcome you, but you should be able to fight it. Kai sent a spiritual message to Mia, warning her about what would happen to her. Mia was taken back by this, but she followed his instructions. Kai's right hand started glowing and he placed it on Mia's cheek. Her face went red as a warm rosy feeling went throughout her body. Kai started the healing process and Mia's body was overtaken by extreme pleasure. She wanted to moan, but since so many people were watching her, she gritted her teeth and remained silent. The scars on her face started closing and they disappeared after a minute. Everyone was stunned by this and many were staring at Mia's beautiful face. Mia frowned at them. Many of them had bullied her for having a pretty body with a disfigured face. She looked at Kai with shining eyes as though he was a hero. How much do I owe you? She asked him. It's for free. And anyone could get treated for free for the next 2 days. Kai said and shrugged as he had enough wealth inside his pendant to fill up the entire planet 5 times in a row. But I owe you for this. You don't understand how much you helped me. Mia said with a spiritual message. Because of that poison? Kai asked with a smile. Mia was so shocked that she just nodded a little. If you really want to thank me, then we can chat with each other later. Meet me after I heal my patients today. Kai bid farewell to her since many people were standing in a line, ready to be tortured. Treated by Kai. Chapter 9 Revenge is a Drug, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At least 200 disciples were standing in a line, waiting for the treatment. Everyone was thinking that Kai was foolish enough to set this up for free. They all thought that they will get treated in 2 days without paying any money. But Kai was gonna give them their worst nightmare and he would enjoy seeing their faces after the so-called treatment. At the front of the line, a woman with a sly grin was eagerly waiting for Kai. She had a bruise on her shoulder that she got after a fight with her roommate. Cultivators heal quickly and the bruise would have probably healed after 2 to 3 days. But she was greedy, so here she was. Kai's hand started glowing and he placed it on her shoulder without warning her about the pleasure she would experience. A warm feeling passed through her body and she surrendered her body to pleasure and released a powerful moan. Everyone there stared at her and she fell to her knees as though all her energy had deserted her. She looked at Kai with a murderous gaze and he simply stared back at her with a neutral face. Why did that happen? This didn't happen to that girl. The girl shouted as Kai smiled in amusement. She managed to control her moans, but if you couldn't do that, it's not my fault. At least your bruise is gone. Kai said and pointed at her shoulder as she looked at it. Thank you. The girl managed to whisper before she walked away. Kai motioned for the next person to come forward who was also a girl. She gulped and moved forward. Kai did the same with her and she also moaned. After treating 5 more girls, a man stepped forward. Kai's face immediately darkened as he stared at the man in front of him. A man. Do I have to listen to a man moaning in front of me? Nope. Maybe I should erect a sound barrier around him. No, if I will be healing him, then my body would be in contact with his body. Meaning that I will still be able to hear him. Then if I am going down, I am taking the rest of these guys with me. Maybe I should have thought of a better idea. Kai thought and steeled his nerves. He touched the guy's elbow and started healing him. The guy tried to clench his teeth and be silent but it was impossible. He released a moan that was etched in Kai's mind. Thankfully my mentality is strong enough to endure this. But what about these guys? Kai silently thought as he looked at the people in front of him. That's enough for demonstration. I will come back tomorrow. Kai said as he pitted the disciples and allowed them to take a rest. The disciples wanted to stop him but knew that it would take them some time to process what had happened. As for the one who moaned, he left the sect and jumped off a 5,000 feet cliff, just to fell into a lake at the bottom. But that's another story. When Mia saw Kai in the hallways, heading towards his house, she started following Kai. When he saw her, he smiled at her before they both headed away to his house. Upon reaching the entrance, he stepped aside to let Mia enter the house. He stepped inside after her and closed the door. As for Mia, many thoughts were swirling in her mind, many perverted thoughts. Even though I am in a dual cultivation sect, this is my first time being alone with a man. Those others who bullied me were always in groups and made sure that at least someone was watching them so that they could laugh at their sick jokes. What if this man attacks me? Will I be able to stop him? Mia's face turned red and Kai chuckled. You are probably thinking that what will you do if I try to attack you? I will not do anything like that as I only cultivate with women who want to cultivate with me. There is nothing for you to worry about. Kai said with a smile. Anyways, I am pretty confident that someone carved those marks on your face. As for the weapon, it might have been a poison dagger. He said after Mia's whole body relaxed a little. Mia was astonished by this. And why wouldn't she be astonished? Kai managed to guess everything perfectly by just touching her once. Yes, you are right. I was captured by some slave traders and sold to a young master's household. He tried to make a move on me but I denied him. He tied me to a chair in an abandoned forest and gave me a chance to accept him and I denied him. He became pretty pissed and started carving on my face. But luckily, the sect masters were visiting that area for a mission and they heard my voice. They rescued me and brought me to this sect. They gave me cultivation resources and helped me. Even though I don't have any special talents, I was able to stay here and become an inner court disciple. I was able to easily stay here the sect. After all, I did leave many things here. Mia decided to tell Kai her entire story. Kai's face remained neutral as he listened to her story and wondered whether he could go and capture those slave traders and torture them. After Mia finished her story, Kai decided to ask her a question. What happened to that young master you mentioned? Is he still alive? Kai asked neutrally. His family has a huge amount of influence in the Western continent. He simply got away with a year in a disciplinary center which doesn't exist. Mia said in an angry voice. Do you want revenge on him or not? Kai asked with sudden ferocity. Don't want revenge, you say? Every night I dream about 1,000 different ways to torture him. Death by 1,000 cuts, burned alive, drowned in salty water with cuts all over his body. She said coldly. Then I can help you get your revenge on them. Kai offered to her and she frowned a little. She doubted that he could do anything against the young master's family but it was a sweet enticing thought to think about it. Well, I don't have anything to do so let's do it. Mia replied and closed her arms. But remember one thing, revenge is like a drug, the more people you obtain revenge from, the more you will want it. Kai suddenly said as Mia smiled. Perhaps I will succumb to the drug, but in the end, it is sweet to obtain revenge. She said with a smile and turned away. She bid farewell to him and started making her way back to her house. Kai however quietly followed her and stretched his spiritual sense around her. And just like he had thought, a group of boys and girls belonging to the Earth Spirit Realm and Sky Spirit Realm were following Mia. Well, who could have guessed that some random disciples would try to follow her? But if no one could have guessed that, could anyone expect these people to drop dead? He muttered to himself before he followed them. Chapter 10 Resurrecting the Dead with a Snap of His Fingers, Chapter Preview. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Kai followed Mia until she reached her house and saw her enter it and closed the door behind her. A minute later, a group of people reached her door and started banging on it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. May I ask what you are doing? Kai chose this moment to appear as they paused. You can tell the difference between us? A woman asked as the others shushed her. Nothing, we are here to talk with Mia. One of them said as Kai raised his eyebrows. And what are those masks for? Cosplay or perhaps? Kai paused and smiled. Kidnapping. He finished as their bodies shivered slightly. Mia, hearing the banter from inside her house, exited and quickly moved to stand beside Kai. She eyed the group with a hawk-like gaze and turned towards Kai. What are you going to do with them? She asked him with a smile. Mia had already figured out a small part of Kai. For some reason, he wanted to help her. So she wanted to see what he would do now. I can simply kill them and make their bodies vanish. He replied as Mia's eyes widened in surprise. We can hear you and don't think that we are afraid of you. One of them said, but both Kai and Mia ignored them. But then, something like this might happen to someone else and it would be a huge waste of their lives to die like that. So let's make an example out of them. Kai said to Mia as the group stepped back a little. Then let's settle this with a death match. After all, if you can't defeat 9 puny disciples, there is no way you can defeat that family. Mia offered and Kai nodded. Ha! You are going to battle the 9 of us in a death match. Are you crazy? One of them asked as Kai nodded again. Mia, can you gather a crowd to watch the match? Kai asked as Mia winked at him and left. Lead the way. Kai said to the group, and even though they wanted to run away, they still lead him towards the entrance exam hall. It looked as though death matches also took place here as they nervously stood there while Kai carefully eyed them. What do you think about this crowd? Mia asked as she appeared a few minutes later. Behind her, about 300 disciples cheered as the group blinked in confusion. Kai was also curious about how Mia got such a crowd together in such a short time. I told them that the winner would receive a kiss from me. She whispered to Kai and winked at him as she blended with the crowd. You have 5 minutes for preparation. Kai said to the group as they huddled together to talk about strategies. We don't know about his cultivation. What should we do? One of them hissed. What we should have done was that we shouldn't have bothered Mia. One of them said, and all of them stared at 2 girls. Why are you looking at us like that? That bitch would have become a nuisance in a few weeks, and those pretty looks will of course fool many guys. One of them countered as all of them shook their heads and prepared a strategy. Since in a death match, it would only end if one of the competitors either gave up or died, so they thought to tire Kai out and then defeat him in the last round with their strongest cultivator. I don't have the time to kill all of you separately. Just come at me together. Kai said and yawned. Nobody could speak anything after hearing Kai's words. The group gulped as if they expected it to be a trap, but when they realized it was not, they stepped forward with happy expressions since they thought they had a chance of winning. They didn't know how wrong they were. The crowd did a countdown as they entered battle positions. When the battle started, Kai created a barrier around himself and the group, and they were startled by it. Fighting a healer was tough since they could heal themselves, but a formations master was even tough. Their hopes suddenly started to dim. Kai snapped his fingers. Their heads all fell down from their bodies and blood poured out from their neck. The crowd shivered as they saw this brutal scene. It was as though one moment they were alive and the next moment they were dead. But the next moment, it was as though time had turned back. Their heads flew back and attached to their necks and they were alive. They trembled in shock and fell down as Kai stared at them. It's sad that this technique could only resurrect someone in the mortal cultivation realms. If this technique was enhanced, I would have been able to resurrect my harem. Kai sighed at this, but since the barrier was up, no one could hear him. Kai then walked towards them and they crawled back while their bodies trembled. After a few minutes, they hit the end of the barrier and squealed in fear as Kai came to stand in front of them. Did you learn your lesson? Kai asked as if he was a teacher asking a question from his students. Why? Yes, we did. One of them said, and Kai shook his head. Perhaps some of you did, but some of you think that they would kill me if they had the chance. Guess I will have to engrave the lesson in your brain. Kai said, and their bodies burst apart. Blood and organs flew everywhere, but none of them marked Kai's clothes. He resurrected them again and this time, instead was satisfied with their expressions. Rest in pieces. Okay, that was a bad joke. He smiled at his own bad joke and snapped his fingers. The group turned to dust that slowly settled down on the ground as Kai walked away. The barrier disappeared as everyone stared at him. You weren't kidding when you said you defeat that family. I am sorry, but I have to use you to obtain my revenge. One day, I will repay you. Mia thought as she quietly followed him out of the welcoming hall. Author's note. Second chapter for today. And guys, the first or .18 chapter is about to come after 2 to 3 chapters. So please wait for it.